everyone, welcome back to Rob's Reviews. I'm Belle, and this week's Severance episode wasn't just a story, it was a deep dive into grief and identity. Are the innies even real people? Do they matter beyond their outies? Let's break it down. Episode 5 kicks off with one of the creepiest cold opens yet. We see a man, presumably a Lumon employee, carting a surgical tray to the optics and design department. He hums Gordon Lightfoot's The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, a song about a shipwreck that claimed the lives of 29 men. A not-so-subtle clue that whatever's happening here isn't just business as usual. Remember when Irving met with Felicia from OND? She mentioned sending shipments to the exports hall, something they used to handle themselves before Lumon started using couriers. Well, this guy seems to be one of them. But this time, the shipment isn't office supplies, it's surgical tools. And if that doesn't scream cloning experiments or something equally sinister, I don't know what does. Meanwhile, Auntie Helena is furious. She confronts Mr. Drummond and Natalie, asking if they should tell Father about what went down at Woe's Hollow. But instead of addressing her concerns, they basically brush her off. Instead, they double down on Lumon's grand plan. Helly has to go back, because apparently Mark S. won't work without her, and in their words, the work is mysterious and important, so we must give him her. If that line doesn't send chills down your spine, I don't know what will. Let's talk about Irving for a second. Man, watching his mental state fall apart was rough, but it wasn't just for drama. His breakdown really showed us what severance actually means. It's not just about splitting your work self from your outside self. It's about losing a part of who you are, and that weight was felt in every single scene. The whole time I couldn't stop thinking, are the innies even considered real people? Like, do they have any value beyond what their outies need from them? Or do they deserve to exist just because they are, well, them? This episode really leaned into that question, and honestly, it's uncomfortable to think about. But that's what makes this show so good. It forces you to confront stuff that's unsettling but so important. And then there's the Rickenbacker. Wow, that moment wasn't just some random plot twist. It was like the show pointing at us and saying, yeah, this is messed up, deal with it. It made me sit back and really think about how fragile identity is in this world and how easy it is to lose yourself when someone else is pulling the strings. So yeah, this episode wasn't just thought-provoking, it was heavy, emotional, and honestly, kind of haunting. Another moment that totally stuck with me was Helly's raw, emotional reaction to Helena basically hijacking their shared body. When she says it feels stealing my body within my mind, it's just chilling. Like, imagine being fully aware but completely powerless. That's next level terrifying. This moment really drives home the whole contradiction behind the severance process. Sure, innies and outies share the same body, but they're living two totally separate lives with totally different wants and needs. And that clash? It's front and center here. Then we've got Dylan casually dropping that line about Irving being dead when he's outside, and it's like, it's such a quick line, but it says so much about how dehumanized the innies are inside Lumon. Are they just placeholders? If an outie moves on with life, does that mean the innie just stops existing? That's some deep existential stuff right there. What really blows my mind is how the show makes you sit with these questions. It's not just telling a story, it's making you wrestle with what it even means to be a person. Are you still you if someone else controls when you exist? Visually, this episode nailed it too. That split screen of Helly and Helena's faces, their expressions so different but locked in this silent war was chef's kiss. And the close-up of Helly when she's pouring her heart out, just brutal. This episode wasn't just about the plot twist or the tension, it was about identity, control, and what happens when the line between self and the other start to blur. And man, Severance just keeps making it harder to look away. So, what do you think? Are innies real people in their own right, or are they just shadows of their outies? Next, let's talk about how Severance continues to hammer home just how messed up Lumon really is when it comes to innies. The MDR crew aren't just mindless worker drones punching numbers all day. They have real emotions, build relationships, and are struggling to figure out who they even are. But Lumon, they couldn't care less. One line that really stuck with me was Miss Wong's super creepy comment about how funerals make innies feel like people. I mean, that one line says it all. Lumen doesn't see the innies as an actual human. They're just objects, something to be used and discarded. And when you think about Irving's situation, it's heartbreaking. If an innie can just be shut down or erased the second their outie decides to quit or move on, then what are they to Lumen? Tools? Science experiments? It's brutal. And just when you think it couldn't get any darker, we get introduced to the mysterious Glasgow block. Like, what is that? What's going on behind those? It's giving major and ethical experiment vibes, and it makes you wonder how deep this rabbit hole really goes. Whatever Lumen's up to, it's definitely not good news for the severed. This episode really made me question where the line is between being human and being seen as disposable, and the fact that Lumen treat its innie like they're nothing more than an office equipment? Yeah, that's absurd. So, what do you guys think is happening in the Glasgow block? And do you think Lumen will ever face the consequences of dehumanizing the severed? Now, let's dive back into that super unsettling opening scene. Yes, I'm talking about the exports hallway. We've been waiting to see what's behind the door, and honestly, it was even creepier than expected. The whole vibe in that hallway was just off. The sterile white walls, the random collection of dental tools that looked way too sharp for comfort, and that eerie whistling of the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. Chills. And if you know the history behind that song, well, no one survived. And it adds this whole extra layer of dread. Like, is Lumen hinting of something bigger here? So, what actually happens in exports? That's the $1,000,000 question. My theory? This is where Lumen extracts and manipulates severed data, but it might go even deeper than that. What if this is where they preserve any consciousness even after someone's terminated? Think about Irving's disappearance. What if he's not gone, but trapped somewhere within Lumen's system? If Lumen can keep innies alive digitally after their outie is done with them, that's next level terrifying. This scene felt like a massive clue that there's way more going on than we've seen so far. And if my theory is right, the implications are huge. But what do you guys think? Is the exports hallway just about data, or is Lumen up to something even more sinister? Now, moving our attention to Milchick, remember when Milchick was the one person in Lumen who actually seemed human? Yeah, well, that version of him is fading fast. His compassionate leadership style, not cutting it anymore. At least, not according to his superiors. And that performance review? Yikes. It was basically a masterclass in corporate manipulation. They didn't come right out and say, hey, be more like this or that. But every little hint and piece of feedback was pushing him toward becoming exactly like that. And let's talk about that elevator scene that Mark. Milchick used to be someone you could trust, someone who might actually protect the MDR team. But now, that moment in the elevator made it pretty clear he's slipping into the role of Lumen's enforcer. Seeing him go from sympathetic to almost sinister was heartbreaking but also so well done. This shift raises some huge questions. How much of who he is will Milchick sacrifice just to keep his job? And if he become another cog in Lumon's machine, what does that mean for the MDR team, who are already hanging by a thread? Moral is low as it is. If Milchick turns on them, things could get really bad. So, what do you think? Is Milchick too far gone, or is there still hope for him to fight back against Lumon's grip? Enough of Milchick. Can we just take a second to talk about Miss Wong? Because what is her deal? She's basically one of the most mysterious characters in Severance, and this episode gave us even more reasons to be suspicious. That unnerving smile she had in front of the Kier painting? Creepy. And her weirdly cryptic comment about funerals making innies feel like people even creepier. Plus, her interactions with Milch, there's definitely some tension there, and it feels like she knows way more than she's letting on. So, here's the big question. Is Miss Wong severed herself? Or, hear me out, what if she's something even more disturbing, like a clone or some kind of Lumen experiment? I mean, with everything we've seen so far, nothing seems off the table. And the subtle power struggle between her and Milchick is fascinating. He clearly underestimates her, but she's got this quiet influence that's hard to ignore. What's her true role in Lumen's grand scheme? I need answers. Now, let's move to something more emotional. Irving and Bert. If their story wasn't already heartbreaking enough, this episode really twisted the knife, didn't it? Finding out that Bert was forced into retirement because of his relationship with Irving was absolutely insane. It wasn't just a personal betrayal, it highlighted how far Lumon is willing to go to control every aspect of the severed workers' lives, even their most human connections. What hits even harder is how much their love transcends the sterile walls of Lumon. Now that they've reconnected outside, there's this glimmer of hope, but also so much uncertainty. What's next for them? Are they going to finally get their chance of happiness? Or is Lumon going to find a way to pull them apart again? But here's the thing. This shared trauma they've endured could actually make them a force to be reckoned with. Both Irving and Bert have experienced the worst of Lumon's manipulation, and that bond could make them powerful allies in the fight against the company. Imagine them teaming up with Mark, Helly, and Dylan. That's a resistance I'd be rooting for all the way. And speaking of Dylan, can we talk about the moment when he found the export's hallway map? Total game changer. But the big question is, who drew it? There's speculation that might have been Felicia, and if that's true, then what was her connection to exports? Did she knew something crucial that got her out, or worse, got her erased? This subplot is shaping up to be one of the most important pieces of the puzzle, and I can't wait to see where it goes next. Irving and Bert's story isn't just about romance, it's about resilience, loss, and the desperate fight for truth in a world that's trying to strip them of everything. And honestly, I'm here for every heartbreaking moment of it. And by the end of this episode, oh my god, that final scene left me absolutely speechless. Mark's erratic behavior throughout the episode already had me on edge. Was he starting to reintegrate? Something felt off. But that confrontation with Gemma or Miss Casey was just devastating. The way his reality seemed to glitch as snippets of his outer life flashed before his eyes, chilling. And then that heartbreaking realization his wife, who he thought was dead, is alive but completely unreachable. It's such a cruel twist, and the emotional weight of that moment hit like a freight train. This changes everything. What does this mean for Mark's sanity? And seriously, what is Lumon's ultimate endgame here? The implications are terrifying, and I have so many questions. Alright, that's a wrap in today's breakdown. Thanks so much for hanging out and diving deep into this wild Severance episode with us. I know this show keeps throwing curveballs at us, but that's what makes it so addictive, right? If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up And if you've got your own theories, hot takes, or even just emotional damage from that ending, drop them in the comments below. I'm always reading and I love hearing what you guys think. Make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the bell so you never miss an upload. I've got more Severance deep dives, theories, and breakdowns coming your way soon. Until next time, stay curious, keep questioning everything, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!